So this is the kind of final finale. We've got some opportunity to bring on some experts here, and then we're going to kind of move through a series of polls. But this idea of this boss battle, I guess your boss battle here, it could be your nemesis, it could be your weak point in your tech, or it could just be getting the tech to kind of be used and deployed the way you want it to be. But we're going to try and answer that and fight that boss as we go through. I hope I've got that boss battle explanation right. Right, so we're going to keep our planners on stage. So I think these are they. I'll remind you who they are. That's them. But we're also going to bring on some different perspectives. And that's from people who are at the coalface with tech change, but they're not the practitioners themselves, but they're working with a lot of firms. So they've seen and done it well and probably less well over the years across many different firms. So we're calling them our change experts, and they are Chris Baigent-Reed from Jigsaw, Nicky Sevel from Woven Advice, and Annette Kinsman from Succession. So please welcome our change experts, and welcome again our planners.
You guys, do you want that seat? Yeah, of course, yeah, please. Do you want that seat?
Oh, sure. Look how gentlemanly this is.
Sure. Go on. Yeah, I'll give you the comfy one.
Right. Stage management complete. Right. Great. So I think the idea for this is that we want this to be quite a free-flowing discussion. It's not enough for me that I have all of these people to manage on stage. I want to be managing people in the room, people at home. I want you to be getting involved. The Oracle has now retired, so she has transferred her magical powers to me via the power of this iPad. So I'll be kind of taking questions. We've got roving mics, but we really kind of want it to be fairly frank. These planners and these change experts have kind of seen and done it all, and they're prepared to be quite frank, I think I'm right in saying, about the mistakes they've made and the mistakes they've seen. So we would really love you to chip in on the app, at home, in the room, and in person. So who am I going to pick on first? So let me see. So I might pick on you, Chris, if that's okay. So, I mean, your business is kind of tech consultancy, so you kind of live and breathe this stuff. So how much of what you've heard from the planners here around sort of their reasons for change and what they're wanting to get out of tech do you sort of recognise in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think a fair amount. I think that, the landscape is changing and evolving, and I don't think it matters what side of the fence you sit. Every business has to be agile. We set up a virtual business in 2012, and tech enabled us to do that. And have we evolved and changed the tech as we've progressed as a business? Absolutely we have. And I think, the landscape is different, and we can use that opportunity to really channel what businesses want to achieve and make sure that the client sits at the heart of what the firm wants to deliver and how it wants to achieve that. So we're seeing lots of changes, and I think, it's interesting, where portals come in, where platforms come in, where practice management comes in, and whether firms choose to use standard practice managements or not, it depends on their model, and everyone is very slightly different.
Okay, great. So, Nicky, I'll come to you now. So, Jenny talked earlier about kind of that multitude of options that people have when they're sort of choosing their tech, that kind of wheel that we've seen throughout the day. And I wonder if there's there's so many options that you get a bit kind of, well, I can't make any decision. It's a bit like when the menu is 20 pages long and you just want a bowl of chips or something. But do you think you get a sense of a sort of decision paralysis with this stuff in terms of, what if I make the wrong decision? This is so fundamental to my business.
Definitely. I think it's got to be one of the biggest challenges that these firms must be facing. So I think what's really important is that you really understand your own business and your own objectives. And I mean, so many advice firms are really small companies. The decision makers are on the ground as well as at the top of the business. And I think you all know how to set objectives for your business, how to set your vision and your mission. And as part of that should be some sort of operational North Star, and having a think about what it is you want to achieve from whatever change you're looking for. If you understand these things about your business, it makes your decision in technology infinitely easier. And also, similar to Sam's experience with choosing the wrong, perhaps the solution that wasn't quite right in reality. When you're sitting there getting a demo from something thinking, this is the most amazing thing, this is exactly what I want, and then in reality, finding it's nothing like what you thought you were going to get, being able to center back onto that North Star and what it was you were trying to achieve really becomes critical.
Okay, great. Annette, you kind of come at this from a point of view of, you're working with a big national advice firm. A lot of that time is kind of acquiring other firms. And I wonder kind of from your perspective and kind of when you've, over the years, been working through all this stuff, where are the pain points? Where are the points where tech change goes wrong?
So there's so many potentials for it to go wrong, and the key is to bring everybody on the journey together. So we can be changing their risk profiling tool, we could be changing their preferred platform, we could be changing their back office system. Moving their data from their system to our data in itself is a huge, huge thing. But then having to train them on new platforms, taking them through the tech changes and making sure they're comfortable, because at the end of the day, what we don't want to impact is the client view. That client journey should be seamless from where they were previously to where they are now, being seen by a large national. So it's all about bringing everybody on the journey, training, and a bit more training, and easing the pain points where it is a new system they've never seen before, making sure they've got the right logins. I know that sounds really basic, but getting the right logins when we've got 3 different regulated entities is really important.
Okay, great. And so I'm kind of wondering what the planners would have to say about kind of tech change and where it goes wrong, and maybe some of what the experts have said kind of resonates. Maybe if I start with you ladies.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had the opinion that as long as from the client's perspective, it's like the swan above water, and underneath we might be, flapping around a wee bit at points. But I think as long as you take your team, as long as you have that goal and you know what you're working towards, and as long as you take your team on that journey with you, and they understand why you're doing the things you're doing, then as David had alluded to in the session earlier, it becomes natural. It's that culture of the firm.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a great team, and it's important for us to make sure the team are able to speak out, because we're 2 sisters. We might be thinking on the same wavelength, but that might be the wrong wavelength. So I want people in my team to say, no, that's not right. Or, I want them to be able to stand up and challenge both of us, And I think we're trying to get that culture across. And I think it is there. I think most of our team feel comfortable speaking out. And that's not the same in every business, But really, everyone's opinion is really important, because everyone is part of that team, and making it work seamlessly is important. And I think by having that buy-in and in a team helps the change go smoothly.
Okay, great. And I suppose this is a question for all of you, really. So we've kind of been talking about changing things up in isolation, I guess, but the reality is that you need to hold down the day-to-day while you're kind of innovating and disrupting and, bringing in new systems and perhaps running systems in parallel and things. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts really on what are the skills you need to be able to manage disruption while at the same time actually running a business.
Diversification within the team. We're lucky in that we've got, so I don't really get involved too much in the day-to-day, which really helps. And I think, perhaps that's, I know you guys are maybe the same. Having somebody who's got a more strategic view, and having someone on the ground. I'm very much. Sometimes I'm too far in the future. My business partner will pull me back into the today quite often, but Lisa is very much in the today, the day thing, the situation that's happening right now. So I think that's an attribute that bodes well for us, because it does allow us to do both.
Okay.
And I think, Natalie, there needs to be a recognition that sometimes you can't do both. You can't, be running at full steam ahead, running your business, and have enough time to be able to implement the tech that you want sufficiently in your business. And sometimes we see firms where they say we're tech-enabled, but they're not really, because they haven't thought about what purpose is it that technology is going to deliver for them. They haven't gone through the right due diligence to make sure that it's going to achieve the outcomes that they want. And ultimately, they end up disappointed.
Yeah.
And, you know, clearly that's some of the experiences that the planners have had here.
I think you had a nice line, Chris, when we spoke about this previously, where you were talking about firms that will come to you and say, yeah, we've nailed it, we're tech-enabled, and you have to tell them, no, you're a magpie because you're just collecting shiny new things. And do you see that, you do find that a lot, that people kind of get distracted by the new without kind of really understanding what is that new thing doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, you know, I loved your term, you know, data geek, tech curious, and I think that's absolutely the right way around, because data is the bedrock. And I think, you know, there isn't good enough integrations, and I think we have to consider when we're looking at new technology, does it integrate with the core components in order that that data can flow and it gives the right client outcomes with accuracy of data? That's all important, and I think some of those elements are clearly missing. And we also have to think about, you know, is it one way or is it two-way integration? Does it really integrate, or is it just a data extraction tool that we're using that doesn't really deliver what we need it to?
Yeah. And
I think one of the best presents we ever got for Christmas, we never got the ZX Spectrum or the Game Boy. We weren't allowed the tech. Mum and Dad wanted us to be active or to be outdoors. So one Christmas we got a set of juggling balls, and I think that's probably
By Boxing Day with Neil.
Yep. We're passing between each other and all sorts.
Andy, what's your take on, I suppose, because you're in that kind of startup mode, very kind of real and fresh, is there that sort of danger of getting distracted by the shiny new object over there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that, and it kind of goes back to what Keith mentioned earlier, because you're trying to do so many different things within the firm. Not only the danger of getting distracted, maybe there's an unpleasant task you don't want to do, and I'm terrible for that. You know, I'd rather read about some new tech than do the accounts or something like that. But equally, on the other hand, because you're so busy and because you're wearing so many hats, it'd be very easy just to focus on the day-to-day consistently and not take a more strategic view, whether that's on the business growth or it's on the specific tech. So I think on the one-person band operation, there's also the danger that you could potentially miss things just from the natural workload of running a day-to-day, because there's no one else there to really delegate to. But again, just speaking from my experience, I found the community of other people running businesses fantastic, you know, part of WhatsApp groups, quarterly catch-ups with other people, both inside and external to the network. And yeah, I think that's a big thing for one-person operations, to be speaking to your peers and other people who are running businesses, because I've had some great ideas from people who are implementing tech, implementing new practices, trying new things, and then I can then say, okay, great, that's maybe worthwhile looking at my practice. Whereas if I hadn't been in those groups, I most likely would have just missed it altogether.
Okay, great.
I think anyone who's ever implemented a back office, which is most of you know, that it very rarely works first time. So I think tech is a bit of a trial and error exercise. It's kind of exciting for you in that scenario where, you know, without trying to pick up the shiny objects, you do get to try different things, see if it works for you. And then I think back to Chris's point, at the end of the day, it does come back to the data. Where's the data? Is it correct? Can you get it back out? Can you map it to your other systems to actually make the most of that? And as long as you're thinking around these lines when you're trialing systems and not committing too much time and effort into it, it's a worthwhile exercise, in my opinion.
And Nicky, I'll just stay with you on that point then. So Woven is a fairly new business in and of itself, in that it is helping firms with this sort of question of managing data. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of talked about data here, and also this kind of issue of choosing different systems that maybe aren't established, people wanting to sort of, you know, try whizzy things or build their own or do some sort of hybrid. But is there a challenge in that, in your experience, in terms of if you're going off piece and then having to do that integration as well as kind of picking something that's a bit more unusual, say?
I think if I understand the question correctly, I think what we've centered Woven around is being data first, data oriented. Everything we do starts with the problem at the beginning of everyone's journey, the data. So we've really modeled everything across every system that we can get our hands on the data of in this industry. So our kind of our way of building is API first, so that if there's any data in our system, you'll be able to get it out, and we'll be able to get it in. So I think that to us is critical, but obviously that then brings the question of what's everyone in their firms, everyone in here, how's the data in your firm? Do you know the quality of it? Do you know what needs to be done to keep it up to date? Is it going to stay up to date? And really, if you can get on top of those things and have a process to keep confidence in your data, then sky's the limit of what you can do. You'll be able to use our system, you'll be able to use any system at the end of the day.
Okay, great. Did somebody want to come in on that?
I just think, I totally agree with Nicola. We've got to start with the data, and it's got to be that data sharing between, so I spend a lot of my times with the platforms and going through the re-platforming experience and making sure that the data coming from one to the other is accurate, is timely, and works exactly how we and the client need it to work. So I will quite often be going to the platforms as a source of truth, and then be using that data to cleanse our internal data, because when we've migrated 60 firms into one, we're going to have, hiccups along the way. But having the ability to clean your data by having a true source of data, that's where we all need to get. That two-way process between the data would make my life so much easier.
And do you, Annette, and maybe this is a question for everyone else as well, do you find that platforms are the source of truth for data or not? Jenny's not sure.
I've had plenty of experiences over the years with bad data platforms, or like life and pension providers in particular. And generally, the advisor knows the client, so if they've moved address, and they might not have updated, a platform or a provider. They might have updated you, though. So I would say our data was better.
Mm-hmm. But I think as well, sometimes in acquisitions of providers and platforms, that end client is lost. And we've had recently, the last month or so, some quite significant, or we've been asked for our records rather than because they haven't got them.
Okay.
And when we're doing
so you're the
changes.
source of truth.
Yeah. And you just think, God, how can you?
And I think the FCA is at fault when they're letting mergers and acquisitions happen, because data's being lost or missed. I don't know where it's going or what's happening to it, but it's certainly not coming back out the way it was when the provider was taken over. So.
And we're only talking data from the last 8 years in that instance. That how can that be lost? It's not that long ago. 30 years maybe, but 8 years, that's pretty poor.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to open it out to the floor now. So does anybody have any questions for our guests? Super shy. Okay, I'm going to ask one of my own then. So in terms of, I think there are two tracks to this in terms of tech change. So there are the firms in the room who are advice or planning kind of firms and practitioners, and there's business owners who are watching this who are going, right, I'm going to embed some sort of change or oversee some sort of change. How do I bring my team with me on that tech change? So that's one part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is you've got wider team members who are not the kind of decision makers, who are going to conferences like this and seeing cool developments, or perhaps hearing through their network, like you said, Andy, that there might be a better way of working out there, and they need to be able to persuade up the line. So they need to be able to say to the person who is the business decision maker, I've seen this thing and I think this is really worthwhile doing of our time. So I'd be interested to kind of get a view from the stage, really, in terms of what's your advice for people who are coming at it from either the business owner aspect of tech change or the kind of team member aspect of tech change. Maybe I will pick on Chris first and then Sam.
So I think in terms of bringing the whole business along, that's communication. Just making sure that everybody in the business is aware as to what the business is going to be doing and the reason. So again, it goes back to the purpose. What is this tech going to do? And if somebody comes to a session like this and sees a piece of shiny technology that they think is going to be fabulous for their business, it's around evidencing and influencing the business to say these are the reasons why we recommend this technology, and this is what it's going to fulfill for us, this is what it's going to fulfill for the team, this is what it's going to fulfill for the clients, and therefore they can demonstrate the benefit that it's going to bring.
Okay, brilliant. Sam?
Yeah, it comes down to culture, doesn't it? So we, within our organisation, we've tried to embed a culture of openness and challenge, and we welcome ideas. Sometimes we get frustrated because we don't get enough ideas, but that's fine too. But, you know, obviously as we all get older, it's inevitable that younger people are going to have more of an idea of what's going on in the tech world. So I think it's just remaining open-minded and not becoming stuck in your ways and listening. But it's a culture thing, and I think it's a healthy thing to have that open dialogue.
Okay, brilliant. Does anybody else have any other advice in terms of business owners versus wider team on change?
I'm probably not the best person to talk about the wider team because I'm just in a one-person operation.
Are you going to do different voices, Andy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be a funny conversation. Yeah, it'd still be an argument as well. Yeah. But in terms of the business owner perspective, again, the community, for me, the financial planning community is a very, very supportive one. So it's okay. Yeah, have the demonstration with the software provider, learn how it can be used practically, but then speak to an end user. You know, look at their business, see how it's integrated with their business. That's what I would do in that instance prior to really, if it was a major change, prior to adopting anything like that.
Okay, great. Did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think knowing your team's passions, because people have different interests and different passions. And if something aligns with somebody in your business and they have a spark of real enthusiasm, then you need to harness that. So I think as a business owner, you know, look to your team, try to find people and champions and people that are interested in moving forward, and that gives them much more reward in their role as well, you know, rather than just being told what to do. It's about trying to, you know, work together for the greater good.
Yeah, I think I heard, I think it might have been Brett Davidson said something like that once, where he was working with a firm, and there was a woman in the firm who was given all the spreadsheets to do because she was really good at spreadsheets, and she ended up leaving, and they were like, well, why did you leave? She's like, I don't like spreadsheets. So that's the kind of thing about just knowing your team, the basics of what their skills are, and actually do the skills actually align with their interests, quite crucially. So that's interesting. So starting to get some questions through on the app. I don't know if that's in the room or at home. So I'll kind of work my way through them. So Joe has asked, what's the one piece of tech, aside from platforms, that you'd really like to see improved? What would help drive your business forward? Or for our change experts, what would help drive the businesses you work with forward? Maybe Annette, and then Nicky, and then Andy.
So for me, it's got to be the integration. So we want our CRM system, our kind of back office system to be the centre, but for everything to work from there. I'm sure, you know, and we've all talked today about having the data in the same format. This has to be key. You know, one system uses an initial and a surname, one uses a full name, one uses a preferred name. We can't even get platforms to call an unwrapped account the same thing. It's about having that uniformity. So having one system at the middle that everything else can then feed into and out of. So we can get the risk profiler working, we can get the platforms working, we can get, you know, Otter AI has been mentioned earlier, and that's certainly something that we're really excited to be looking at, you know, the transcription services, because why should any of us be typing up minutes in this day and age? You know, that kind of integration with one system as the focal point and everything else leading in and out of it, that will just free up so much time for everybody.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think it's a bit sad that we can't just come out and tell you a system or some magical solution that would just change the industry. I think we all want that to be AI, but to Annette's point, AI is only as good as the kind of light chat end you can get out of GPT until we fix the data behind the problem, and data, and then the integrations, which is obviously a solution to moving that data around, is really the thing that needs to level up in this space. We're trying.
Level up, yeah.
Level up, game over almost. No, and that's the most important thing. And then once we achieve that, hopefully we all achieve it together, it'll create a completely new landscape, and that canvas is really, really exciting for us. So if we all chip in and get our data right, then we can actually probably get in front of even regulation on the AI perspective and support each other into building these tools and sharing resources. And then, attacking the 92% of the population that don't get financial advice. I think that's really what's important here. It's enabling you all to do that.
Keith, can you hang on and we'll get a mic to you? No, it's fine. Ask it. It's just that we need people at home to be able to hear you. I don't want to stop your flow.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to ask, so how is that achieved then? So we're talking a lot about sort of conformity of data, standardization. Where is the sort of key point or the agreement where that can happen? Because I think we're all talking the same language here. So what do we need to do to create that change? Where does it come from?
I think one comes from desire, as a business, there are a lot of kind of change factors in the space at the moment. All the consolidation is pointing a spotlight on data. If you're a business, you don't even know what's kind of under the hood. You're trying to sell your business, you need to be able to show what data you've got. All the consolidators who are buying firms are trying to aggregate the data and put it together to make some use of it. Businesses trying to grow, if you were to try and get some financing or try and bring in some new staff in your business, you really need to know what's going on so that you can take your business to the next level. To do that, you really need to know what's going on in your business. You need the data to do that. So firstly, that desire to change and fix that. I think, as Chris works with so many firms on fixing this, that journey is available to you. At the next level, for example, what we're working on is taking AI in a different sense to what ChatGPT does, but in terms of machine learning and trying to build the tools to help you fix that data. This is something that I think a lot of people want to blame their back office for their data being problematic, but you can blame them all you like. You're responsible for your data, and I think it was spoken about in your session. It is your data. One thing is portability, but second is reliability. And no matter what systems you've got, you're responsible for fixing that. So we will hopefully get you there. I'm trying really hard.
Keith, does that answer your question? Cool, thanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions while the mic's roaming around? Oh, great, right at the back. I think there's one on this side here at the back. Oh, the mic isn't too far from you, so if you can just hang on until it gets to you, that's great. Thank you. Hi, Marie.
Hi. I was just going to ask, who do you expect to come up with the standardisation? Is it the regulator? Is it other providers? Who is going to come up with, yes, surname comes first name comes first, this is the standardisation? That's what I'm interested in.
We've all been waiting for the pensions dashboard, haven't we? And hopefully then that has to be a standardised format. So all of the pension providers, the custodians, will need to be able to provide the data for the pensions dashboard in the same format so that when we, all of us in this room, as holders of pensions, can sign on to that dashboard and find our data. So there needs to be the tech in the middle that takes all the different formats from all of the different pension providers and puts it into that unique format. Now, if we can all agree what that format is, it will make everybody's life, I'm hoping, Nicky, so much easier because then we can use that same format across providers, back office systems, platforms, and it doesn't mean to say we all have to talk to our clients in the same way and use the same, opening salutation, but it means that when we're sharing data between the systems, it's in a format that's recognised.
Is there a problem with that, though, in the sense of, to Jenny and Nicola's point, that for them, they're the single source of truth, so it doesn't really matter if it comes from a dashboard because it's still wrong?
I think the issue is that every firm is different and giving different types of advice. So depending on the type of advice, then you need different types of data. So although you can have a standard for pensions, or you can have a standard for ISAs, but IHT might have a whole different set of data that is not going to be in the standard because it's not what everybody does. So it's really difficult to come up with standards. You maybe need several standards for different types of client outcome.
Subsets of standards for one super standard.
Yeah, but it's got to be the client focus. It's got to be what they're doing through their life cycle. So there's different time periods in the client's life that they'll need different standards of data.
And I suppose what Marie is trying to get at is who will ultimately drive that, I guess. I mean, I don't know whether Chris or Andy or Sam, you kind of have a view on, would you be all right with the regulator saying we want data to be shared in X way, or X data to be supplied, or mandating certain things around how processes work? Or, I guess what we're trying to sort of understand is, where does the driver come from? Hi, Mark, I'll come to you next. Or do you want me to come to you now? Okay. Should we get you a mic then, or are you still mic'd up? No, I'm still mic'd up. Okay. Thanks, Marie.
Only because... and this isn't a fix, right? We didn't know what these guys were going to say, but one of the sponsors today is literally the industry participant that sets standards, and that's Criterion. So I don't know if Billy or one of the guys from Criterion is here, but I think it might be useful to hear about what's involved in setting a standard, and then trying to get people to kind of
He's properly put you on the spot, hasn't he?
He's very good at this. I've heard him before.
If you're happy to talk about it, we'll get a mic to you. I mean, I suppose that's the thing. It's like Jason was saying, can you just do this? So I think what we're talking about is, can you just create standards? And I suppose what you're saying, Mark, is that it's actually a bit more tricky than that, and there is actually some work to be leveraging.
See, I think it sounds very easy, but Billy says it's not. So,
Tell Mark why he's wrong, then.
I'm not going to tell Mark why he's wrong. Right.
You always used to.
That's true. Sorry, just so we're clear, Criterion have been around for 30 years in one guise or another, and there are approximately 80 processes that have been standardized. Now, that's the key. The standards that we define are integration standards, so if you're sending a bulk valuation message between a platform and a back office for you guys to access, invariably that's using our standards. If you're getting a life illustration, for a term assurance off a portal, the data that's exchanged between the provider and the portal is standardized using our standards. So not everything has been standardized, and I would say data integration standards are easier than standardizing the data that exists in every single mainframe system, platform, back office system that's been created over a long period of time. To re-engineer that, I think, would be impossible because of the amount of work and cost involved in that. But you can integrate data through, standardize the integration of data rather than go back and try and standardize all the data that's been created in the industry over a very long period of time. So there's the challenge. But we're here to listen. We have standardized a lot of processes that haven't been adopted across the industry that are sitting on the shelf, which I'm happy to talk about at probably a separate point. But yeah, we're here. That's what we do. But it is challenging to change the records that exist today because there's an awful lot of other systems and processes will hang off that data operating in product providers' platforms and your own businesses.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, great. In terms of questions that we've got from the app, I'll just try and take a couple of them. So there's one here which is around client portals. So are firms using client portals? Are there any general views around kind of, I guess, sort of the benefits or the kind of drawbacks of client portals? Andy, do you want to go on that?
Yeah, I use a client portal, have done previously, but now using a different one, the bog standard cash calc version. So white labelled, very intuitive, very easy to use. I'm sure there's many people in the room that use that or something very similar. But it just, that one, going back to the phrase of the day in terms of just working, so far my experience has been that one just works. Now it has its limitations in terms of pulling through live client valuation data, But again, just my personal view, I'm perfectly happy with that. I want the client portal for me to be a means of the client communicating securely with me, sharing documents securely with me, digital fact find. I'm personally not too fussed, again, just my opinion, if the client has to go elsewhere to get their valuation data, because at the end of the day, should the client be seeing their valuation every single day, every single time they interact with us? That's maybe a wider debate, I don't know, but my personal view is I'm relatively happy with the valuation data not pulling through to my client portal.
Sam and Chris, any thoughts on client portals?
I think there's a lot of limitations in existing portals. I think they're good, they're useful, but in my opinion, where we want to get to is a place where portals do so much more than just simply provide clients with
a summary, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that goes from onboarding to all the way through, again, to communities and external recommendations. And, you know, the potential is huge with portals. But again, I think we just need to sort of step out of the mindset of this is just a place where clients can log on to get their updated valuation.
Actually, you could leverage it in terms of deploying other services.
Yeah, and it becomes a value added. And you know, a reason for clients to stay with you ultimately, but you're giving something to them with real value.
Great. Chris, did you have a take on that?
Yeah, I think there are so many portals, you know, whether it's with a cash flow, whether it's with a practice management, whether it's independent. I think, again, for me, it goes back to the purpose. What engagement, level of engagement do you want with your client through the portal? We've seen an increase in that digital adoption, you know, part of COVID, aided, you know, that flow of data. And I think it's about the benefit that they gain, and it's a different level of engagement that they can get. And I think it's about freedom of choice and giving them decisions and access to data at their fingertips, which is really important.
Okay. And Jenny and Nicola, do you have a client portal?
Yeah. So we use Money Info.
Okay. And how do you find the engagement with that?
COVID certainly helped. The pandemic certainly helped the adoption of it. But in reality, we still send things in the post to clients because, again, you can only go... Not all clients, but you can only go as fast as your slowest client. So we still have a number that we still... So even if you're sending communications or through the portal, you know, we've still got this, again, dual systems at the moment. But I would say the functionality is pretty good for what we want from the portal.
And we've been ramping up the use of it with different things recently. But I think in the next 12 months, we're going to... Nicky won't know this yet, but we're going to radically change what we're doing.
But all the stuff that we've been talking about change.
It can do so much more. And, you know, we need to harness it because I think any system's limited by your own imagination. So, you know, all the systems available can do so much, but it depends what effort you put in and what you can imagine it doing to fulfill your business goals. But yeah, it's your end vision is what's important.
Okay, great. Do we have any more questions from the floor right now? This is your last opportunity to ask them. There we go. Thank you, sir.
If you think about the life cycle of an application, it can start off quite simple. And probably some of the best applications we use are the most simple ones. They're intuitive. You can pick them up and start using them straight away. The learning curve is very shallow. And then what seems to happen over time is that the user thinks, oh, well, it'd be useful if we could add this and if we can add that. And the application grows and it keeps on growing. And it becomes this huge thing which, like some back office systems now possibly, where you look at a box, you're not quite sure even what the question is, never mind what the answer should be to go in that box. And it becomes quite difficult to, you know, the learning curve is suddenly great. And then we think, oh dear, we prefer the maps that were really simple. And then we think, well, the answer to this is integration. If we could have all these simple apps and then integrate them all, it would all work really well. That's kind of sort of where we are now, maybe. But of course, one of the big problems with integration is there possibly could be some vested interests in there not being quite that same comfortable flow of data. So, for example, if I was a platform and I'd spent a lot of money making a very nice user interface, a front end to my platform, I want advisors to go there on a regular basis. I want them to look at perhaps other products I might be able to offer them and their clients. And I probably don't want that data to be accessed through another system. So I'm probably not going to make that that integration of data, that flow of data, quite as easy as maybe what the end user might think, oh, I just want it to work. And the same probably applies to incumbent back office system things. So any thoughts on that?
You might have to help me out there with summarising what your question was. Is it more? Is it to do with how do you pick your systems and how do you know what you want? Is that a fair paraphrase?
Or the commerciality of it? Is it the?
Yeah. I think Consumer Duty's done it naturally because we have to collaborate for the client outcome. And I think that's the important point now. Everyone should be collaborating much more for that client outcome. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I know software providers are not covered by Consumer Duty because they're not necessarily regulated, but it's still, if every firm that's using them is regulated and they're trying to achieve that, then it's in their interest to achieve that and help them achieve that. So we should be seeing an unprecedented collaboration to try and get that client outcome as best as it can be.
Andy, just briefly, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Sorry, if I understood that correctly, your question, maybe the potential vested interests that stop some of the data flowing between providers, which I think is a really good point. I don't have an answer, but I'd highlight another, just from a practitioner's perspective, another example of that would be getting information from providers. We'll just call it the LOA process for short. Like that's still ridiculously long in today's day and age. And I know there's great attempts trying to standardise that and make it quicker. But that's maybe an example of what you were alluding to, as to maybe some companies not wanting to share that data as quickly as they perhaps should be.
Okay, interesting. We have to leave it there. So please say thank you to our planners and to our change experts, and thank you for all of your questions.